好。Hello everyone, welcome to today's session to meditate together. No matter where you are, which country you are from, which culture you are in, now let's share this space and time together to investigate the mind a little more, to delve into ourselves, to really understand the inner world, to really clear the confusion about life, all the human issues are the consequence of the confusion about life and existence. Today, let's explore the mind. By setting aside everything human has created, just be at this moment, to look at ourselves, look at the mind, examine it. Such a simple look proves difficult for many people. We tend to interpret it. We tend to judge it. We tend to condemn it. We tend to explain it. But all those actions are taking place in the domain of thoughts. in this analytical process, which lead to nowhere. Human beings are so good at analyzing things, putting thoughts into it. But the mind is beyond the thoughts. To really understand how the mind works, it requires everybody to empty the thoughts immediately, empty the content of the consciousness immediately. No words, no images, no thoughts to describe it. Just look, just perceive. Thoughts has become so important for people's life. Almost at every corner of life, there's thought, concept, ideas, ideology. It has formed a wall between us and things around us. We are isolated by thoughts, aren't we? Because of the thoughts, we have been out of contact with almost everything around us. People, things, nature. We can't really meet them because we always interpret according to our own conditioning, our own desires, our own prejudices, our opinions. Everything has been distorted by thoughts. This has created a huge amount of confusion about life, a huge amount of issues. In the daily life, in the family, in the work, in the study. Those issues never stop because the mind issues never stops. The self keeps making mischief at each moment in all kinds of ways, in all kinds of forms, all kinds of self-concern, all kinds of self-deception. No wonder that life is full of conflict, chaos, confusion, hurt, contradiction, sorrow. To solve all these issues, we can't do it one by one because it's numerous. And the want to finish it one by one is another illusion. It's another part of thoughts, part of the chaos. Unless we see all those things clearly, totally. To cut off the thoughts immediately. The nature of the mind seems to be absolute, all or nothing. Either have no issues at all, either full of issues. To meditate is to really perceive, capture this absoluteness of the nature of the mind. So one can have a very clear, very lucid mind to take action, to solve the issues. The issues are rather superficial. Unless we dig out the root, which is the mind, the monkey mind, the restless mind. Unless we tackle that, all the issues will continue in different forms. So that's the meaning of meditation. Not to make the self happy temporarily. There are different ways of entertainment to make the self happy. And if we don't understand meditation carefully, we also reduce meditation as a sort of entertainment. So today, before we continue the journey, the speaker is inviting you to keep silent for 3 or 4 minutes, during which you can focus on the breath, or just simply empty everything. So we can start today's journey with a beginner's mind, with a clear mind, to see the meaning, the deeper meaning of meditation. As we said at the beginning of the session, thoughts have become so important in life. So is the language. That's to say, the language has become such an important part of life. Language is everywhere. From the supermarket to the book, to the mobile phone, computer, to the daily conversation between people, to all kinds of TV series, entertainment programs, videos, audios, podcasts. Language is everywhere. But we rarely use it carefully. We abuse it in all kinds of ways without any awareness. Language is a tool which should have been used with caution, very carefully. Because the mind has been trained to react to the symbols, to the words, to the sentences. If the language is not used carefully, it will trick a lot of things from the mind. Without language, how can one think? Words, sentences, have been the carrier of thoughts. We think in terms languages, words, in terms of images. All kinds of reasoning is also based on the language. All kinds of linguistic logic. So every time we speak something, the words will trigger some images in the mind very quickly. Because the mind has been trained from youth in this way that the mind has reacted to the words very, very quickly. Fortunately or unfortunately, the speaker's language is not English. So his reaction to words is much slower than many of our listeners. But if we really go slowly to notice that, how influential the words are on the mind. What is language? Language are a series of symbols which makes the words, then sentences further, paragraphs, so we can give a meaning to the combination of the words. The mind must give a meaning to the words to make sense of the verse. And between you and me, we must agree on the same way of giving meaning to the verse. It means that we make a compromise to communicate. Or else everyone has different way of giving meaning to the verse. It is not possible to communicate. Because this compromise, this agreement, we can say that the language is a compromised communication. When we agree on the same usage of the language, we can communicate, right? In all kinds of life situations, at work, in the classroom, at home, in the store. But have you ever noticed that language is not perfect? It's never perfect. When we say a word, ample, different images will be triggered in different people's mind. Someone might think the fruit first, a green one. Other might think some fruit, the red one. Perhaps another people thinks the mobile phone or the computer, the brand. So even for the same word, it has different connotations, different associations in different people's mind. For many daily things, this kind of a difference or distinction might not make a difference. We can go with it. But when we talk about the inner world, our emotions, our feelings, the limitations of the verse, the verbal expression begin to surface. And unfortunately, nowadays, the language has been used extensively to express the self. From the media, from the blog, podcast, there are so many people are voicing themselves via verse, via languages. Creating a lot of noise, confusion. Because the verbal statement about the mind is very inaccurate. And it is rather influential because most people don't examine the meaning of verse. They are influenced by the image triggered by the verse when we heard them. And of course, many verse, many expressions has been polluted by the self-centered views, by the what we call the general sense. So why verse? Why the language? We grew up in all kinds of influences from the tradition, from the culture. And this determines many of our behaviors, common behaviors, which we are not aware of. And when one encounters the mental challenge, one gets immediately confused. Because under the influence of the language, the common usage of the language, the mind gets confused. Look at our mental challenges. How many of them are not related to languages? We tend to label everything, label ourselves, label others. We suffer from the wrong labels. We suffer from being labeled wrongly by others. To meditate is to really see this fact. Words are not a thing. The description is not described. But the mind tends to mistake the description for the described. Which creates a lot of confusion, a lot of contradictions, conflicts. In many moments, we try to think, try to reason, which is still in the domain of language, thoughts. Without the proper understanding the language, the misuse of the language is everywhere in our thinking, in the thoughts. That's why sometimes we can get some very weird conclusions, some very problematic conclusions that only further mislead us. It is very important for everyone to see this in their life, see the mischief played by the language in their daily life. Look at the miscommunication between us, between everybody. Most time we speak, but most time it's sort of a miscommunication, isn't it? All kinds of misunderstandings. All kinds of problems. All kinds of stress between the human beings, the relationship. They are all from, partially, the language. And now we are meditating. We are investigating the mind. Many people are still want to figured out in verse, in thoughts, which only add more confusion about meditation. To meditate in a pure sense, in a pure form, is to keep silent. Not only on the mouth, but inwardly keep silent. We speak a lot, way too much. Not only verbally, but also inwardly. Because we think in terms of verse, languages, we ruminate. To meditate, the action is fairly simple. It's doing it now. That's to keep silent. Inwardly, outwardly, keep silent. To let the mind return to peace naturally. This borders on saying, empty the mind, empty the thoughts now, immediately. In that emptying, one began to understand the limitation of the language, the influence of the language. One will know how to use the verse, the language properly. One will understand how the word me triggers the self. Leads to the self-concern, self-indulgence. In the English language, as the speaker has observed, there are way too many I, me, those verbs. Way too many. Have you noticed the feeling where every time you speak me or I? Have you ever noticed that? The word me or I can trigger the self-consciousness, trigger the thoughts about the self. It can be very subtle, but it is very important as part of the meditation to understand how the language sustains the self, the ego, on such a subtle level. It's up to everybody to observe this in the daily conversation. So, meditate is to be really silent. And only speak when really necessary. And speak carefully. without the stimulation from the verse, when the mind is not speaking, the intelligence of the body begin to function. Or one begin to feel the intelligence of the body functions. When we really keep silent, doing now, like each moment, we cut off the stimulations. Everything will recover soon, because the intelligence of the body is always to return to peace, to calm. Please don't agree or disagree with the speaker. Examine it in your life, to see this clearly in your life. To really practice how to silence oneself. Doing so is the meditation. No matter you are doing breath meditation or any kind of other practice, the essence is the same. Move away from thoughts. Keep silent inwardly. And feel the body. Feel the richness of the neurons over the body. When the mind is really silent, the mind is free from the disorder. The disorder means the self, the ego. Which is in the form of words, expressions, images, thoughts. So when one really understands what is meditation, one won't ask how to meditate, because any practice can be used properly when one understands the essence. So now, it's time for us to meditate, following the audio guide. In the next 10 or 15 minutes, let's empty the mind. Keep silent, not only verbally, but also inwardly. To examine it, to feel, to find out the magic of the mind. Now, let's take a 10-minute meditation. Start by taking a moment to find a comfortable position to sit in a posture that you feel relaxed and get alert. Let hands rest on your knees or laps. Let the eyes close gently. Soften your forehead. Act a soft smile in the corner of your lips. Breathe naturally. As you breathe in, be aware that you are breathing in. Feel the sensation of breathing in. The region can be the nostrils, can be the belly, can be anywhere. Focus on the part you feel most. As you breathe out, be aware that you are breathing out. Feel the sensation of breathing out. The region can be the nostrils, can be the belly, can be anywhere. Focus on the part you feel most. Fix your attention on the breath. Let go of any thought, words, images. This moment, nothing is more important than breath. While you are listening to the bell, check where your attention is. If it wasn't on the breath, after the bell, gently invite your attention back to the breath and sustain your attention on the breath. Slowly bring your awareness back to this room. Feel into your body. Wiggle your fingers and toes. When you are ready, open your eyes. Hopefully, the past 15 minutes meditation has brought you some peace and calm. Look at the world around us. This world is full of words. To most people, the mind is words. The words are the mind. The mind has been so attached to the verbal expression, verbal statements. We tend to take the literal meanings of the verse without examining the way we give meanings to the verse. Because this, most people are following the general sense of the use of the language, and the mind is fully attached to verse. It is no wonder such a mind is so easily influenced by the propaganda, by the media, by all kinds of things. And such a mind is not only superficial, but also confused about everything. A mind that is easy to be influenced is a confused mind. To meditate, the deep meaning of meditation is to turn inward. To understand why the mind is so easily influenced. Can we cut off the influence immediately? Let's to empty the mind immediately, the consciousness immediately, the verse immediately, everything immediately. So the mind is free of the attachment to verse. And then such a mind becomes immovable. Because the mind is clear, very clear about everything, the life, the existence. No ill influence. can take it down. That state of the mind, clear, lucid, is impregnable. This all points to a word, alone. Being alone mentally. No matter how many people are around you, can you be alone mentally? In that aloneness, everything is clear. Great. How time flies. Now it's almost the end of the session. And thank you for so many people are here together, being alone together, to meditate, to see the meaning, the deeper meaning behind meditation. If you like this session, please share it with more people so we can invite more people to join this session to get clarity about life. Nothing is more valuable than clarity to share, isn't it? And if you like to, welcome to donate to the session. All the income will go to the foundation, the Mindverse Foundation, to help the foundation to bring clarity to more and more people. And also, thank you for so many people are leaving their comments. I believe the peace has arrived you, has reached your mind, reached your heart. And let's pass on this peace to more people. So, by the end of the session, thank you again. And hope everybody has a good week. May peace and calm be with everybody at each moment. And take care. See you next time. See you in the future sessions. Goodbye.